everyone, my name is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and liked it, then subscribe, bell notification, and give the video a thumbs up. As always, we're doing an end of the year. If you follow me on Instagram or in the TBR and Beyond group, I'm sure you've seen my list already. We come up with a top 10, each of the mods and the admins, and then, as always, there's a few honorable mentions. And this year was just, I know for the world it was not a great year, but I read some amazing books. I think this year was a bit weird in the sense that normally I'm like, okay, there's a list of books that I kind of know that are going to go in there, and then I can't figure out the ranking system whatsoever, and the top 3 or whatever is the most difficult. But this year I knew like the top 7, like without thinking. There was no question in my mind which was number 1 and everything like that. So that was a little weird this year. And yeah, so we're gonna go from 10 to 1, 10 being the least favorite of my favorites, and number 1 just being the absolute best. And I'm sure a few of you can guess which is my best anyways. But we will start off with number 10. So number 10 is The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. This is her second standalone novel and fourth book total. She has the Daughter of the Pirate King duology, and then Warrior of the Wild, and then this one. This was everything I was hoping it was going to be and more, honestly. Everyone just told me it was like a Slytherin-y romance, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And honestly, when you step back, the main character's like not the greatest of people, but but you still, like, the whole book, you rooted for her. She grew an awful lot as a character. You know, she's definitely not the most pure main character we've ever had in a YA, but I think it's just like so impressive that like every single book that Trisha Levenseller writes is so like, there's no 500-page like chunkers. Even though she writes predominantly in fantasy, she gets so much done in such a few amount of pages. Everything is there that you need, but the characters, I somehow get so attached to her characters. I think I was so anticipating this one, which could have definitely been a letdown. And Daughter of the Pirate King is one of my favorite series. I'm definitely going to be doing a reread of it in 2021. And I liked Warrior of the Wild, just nowhere near as much as Daughter of the Pirate King, and nowhere, the main character in Warrior of the Wild was nowhere near Alosa in terms of like just me loving that character. But this one was just amazing. Our main character, I'm so attached to her. I love everything in this world. I love the setting in like kind of a royalty kingdom thing, but like the main character not being like some chosen one virginal character, you know what I mean? So it plays with a couple tropes, but honestly the main character is like, I love her. She's not a good character in terms of morals or anything like that. She gets better over the book, but like, I just love her. Everything about her. She's a very unique character in the realm of YA fantasy. I don't think that this book was even on my radar, but number 9 is going to Dangerous Alliance, An Ostentatious Romance by Jenny Eki Cohen. I believe this is her debut work, which I was quite surprised with. We've established on this channel, I don't like Jane Austen, but I seem to be just adoring all of the retellings coming out. And this was just kind of another one that did not disappoint me at all. I think I just found out about it like a couple days before it came out or something like that. I don't remember the cover reveal and like nothing in that. But honestly, I think my just absolute love of this is the characters. I think it steps out of the realm of Jane Austen retellings, and to have very identifiable, unique characters that are very still like in the Jane Austen world, but they are relatable. My utter love of the parents in this. Every time I read a Victorian, there's like, without a fail, there's either like one parent is dead, or sorry, I shouldn't say only or one of them is like a raging misogynist. I know it's a product of the time, but like, you're retelling shit. Like, you can just take some liberties, and that's what the author did. She took some liberties with the laws, which was really interesting, with divorce laws and everything, because I know that had changed an awful lot in the last like 150 to 200 years. There's been a lot of changes in that, so she talks a lot about it at the back. I love that the parents in this are not raging misogynists. One, like, the main character sister comes home and is like, my husband beat me, and they're like, your husband did what now? And okay, you're staying here and we're gonna sort out this divorce because what the fuck? Like, there's no like, well, it's your husband, you just have to like take it and like just make him happier. None of this shit. The parents are like, no, and the dad's like, I'm gonna go kill your husband, okay? Like, we're cool with that. And then they're like, okay, so instead of immediately being like, okay, we have to marry off this daughter now to make sure this asshole doesn't get they're like, okay, you need to go find a husband. Not, okay, here's this guy we've picked. So I feel like they just give the characters so much more independence, and I feel like a lot of that gets lost in retellings because Jane Austen is historical, but like there was so much change happening in this time period, honestly just over the past 2 centuries, with the role of women in the home and inheritances and everything like this. So I like that that played with that. So I've read this book 3 times, I think, total this year. I can't wait. She has something coming out in 2021, I think. I'm 99% sure it's 2021, if not 2022, and I will absolutely be pre-ordering that. I am so excited for that, and this was just a nice, relaxing historical fiction, and it's just a source of comfort. Another one that was not even remotely on my radar at any point last year until basically it came out was You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle. This is another debut, actually, and in a genre that I have slowly been getting into, which is romance. I seem to find a lot of interest in romances where there's diverse representation within the cast, whether that's race, sexual orientation, ability, you know, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's like really weird professions, and then I find out more about that. I found this really interesting. I think it talks a lot about I don't know what the proper term would be, but like there's social issues, how we see people with education, with like a hierarchy and like valuing people with degrees, but then there's also the like immense classism in that, and then living in these small communities which are very there's a lot of them are dying in terms of jobs and everything like that. And then you have this banter between the main character and her potential future mother-in-law and then her fiancé throughout this whole thing. There is several scenes in there where she interacts with the mother of her fiance, and like it just gave me Gilmore Girl vibes. The Emily Gilmore-ness and the Lorelai Gilmore-ness of the dialogue and everything just jumped out. For authors to be able to translate comedy in especially in debut work, I feel like it's just very impressive to me because I know so many authors try and it doesn't land. I love this game of chicken that they have after they break up, and are like, well, who's gonna, you know, be the one to finally step away? And the romance honestly is actually very sweet. I liked it an awful lot. It was very cute. So number 7 is you can't really see that, is The King of Crows. Will that show up? There we go. This is book 4 in the Diviners series. I picked up the Diviners last year for the 2020 challenge I was doing with the TBR and Beyond group to read a book that I had not read because of the cover. They have done so many cover changes. It's been so frustrating. So I ended up getting the Australian versions. I found out after I ordered them all that there's 2 different kind of versions. So I have books 2 and 4 in these taller ones and books 1 and 3 in the shorter ones. So I'll have to get, I actually like the taller ones, so I'll probably get books 1 and 2 or 1 and 3 and the taller ones when I can. But this did not disappoint as a wrap-up, and honestly I feel like I just get disappointed an awful lot by series conclusions, and this whole series was so undermarketed, so poorly marketed with what they did. They could have done so much with this. This series is so diverse. There is so much representation in kind of every field you can possibly imagine. I love the topics it does tackle because it has this diversity in the cast, and then you're like, okay, it's set in the 1920s. You can't have just a bunch of key people from like Black, Asian, white hanging out and no one's gonna say anything about all the racial issues at the time. They don't do that. And like, but then they also make this historical, paranormal, supernatural, weird mystery that reminds me of like a little bit of like the Jacoby series, but like just expanded upon and blown up and maybe grown up a little bit. It's mind-blowingly good series, and the conclusion, I was honestly expecting it to let me down a little bit just because of how much I have loved each book. The Diviners is amazing. Then book 2 is somehow better than book 1, and same with 3 being better than books 2 and 1. I think this is honestly either on par or better than book 3. I'm amazingly impressed because book 3 ended in a hard place, so I didn't know what she was going to do with it, but I blew through this book despite it being a chunky one, and it was fantastic and such an amazing series that the publisher messed up so badly on. I feel like with how much everyone loved something like Stalking Jack the Ripper, this could have kind of fallen under that if they had done proper marketing and not changed the covers nonstop to be these vague things that don't really tell you anything about the book. This could have been like a massive series. And I know a bunch of people didn't touch it because of the book covers. I am one of those people, and I regret it. So definitely recommend the Diviner series, and book 4, the whole series does not disappoint. And then book number 6, sixth spot, there we go, is The Extraordinaries by TJ Klune. I discovered TJ Klune this year, and oh boy. So this is his YA. I think all of this is traditional publishing debut for this year. I think he's published other stuff, but it was either self-published or like indie small publishers, if I'm correct. This, oh my gosh. First of all, they did an amazing job with the cover and everything. I love that they had the comics underneath. This was so well marketed in kind of a flip of the Diviner series here. It's honestly a very great mixture of The Incredibles. The movie meets Renegades by Marissa Meyer. It is a wild, there's so much comic relief, funny, enjoyable, lovable main characters. Well, not just main characters, just kind of the whole cast. You have a weird situation where I don't think I read this a ton, where you as the reader are very aware that the main character has a crush on someone else and that there's another person that has a crush on him, and he doesn't seem to be totally cognizant of that, and you as a reader are like, dude, are you blind? Like, what are you not seeing? Hello, look over here. And just this whole concept of living in this world that is kind of our world, but it's a different world, obviously, that has superheroes and a villain and everything flying around you at the same time is very interesting. The main character himself, he is gay, he has ADHD, and is there something else? I feel like there's another form of representation. He also has, his mother has passed away, so he has a single father. I feel like an honest explanation of, I loved this book so much that the father, being a cop in 2020, reading this book, did not even haze me. I automatically, honestly, in all forms of media, go on defensive, and it's a red flag to me when there's a character who I'm supposed to feel a bunch of sympathy for, very clearly, who is a cop or in the army, because I feel like it's just a bunch of propaganda at this point. So this was something, as soon as I went in, I went, oh no, am I not gonna like this TJ Klune book? But honestly, it's not. It's just it took me out of things. There's this hilarious scene where the main character doesn't take his medication, and then he ends up getting arrested for being somewhere he's trespassing, and goes to the cop station, and the cops are like, you know, this is his dad or whatever, and the cop's like, okay, we have to drive you home, you're a minor, we'll drop you off. And there's this whole dialogue that, again, reminds me of the Gilmore Girls quite a bit, and the sarcasm and the banter. I loved it so much, and I cannot wait for Flashfire. Spot number 5 goes to The Never Tilting World by Rin Chupeco. I have tried The Bone Witch, Wicked As You Wish, and was there something else by this author? Unfortunately, I didn't like them, but this series, I have read the book too. The duology is fantastic. I feel like I have been burnt out an awful lot on YA fantasies because they are so formulaic at this point. There's not a lot of variety in plot. You can just kind of take character names and swap them back and forth and in between and everything. Something about this book, though, stands out to me. I blew through it so quickly. I love the characters. I love the whole concept of the world where half of it is overly hot and the other half is like frozen, and we have these split sisters. I feel like we have that trope of like separated siblings and like conflict between the aunt slash mother. All of that stuff I don't think is necessarily new, but I feel like this was just so fleshed out. I honestly don't know how to explain it. I don't think any of this stuff was like necessarily unique, but this book was just written so well, and the characters were just developed so well, and the world and the conflict, everything was just done so well. Different than the other other works that I've read by this author, and it's different from the other YA fantasies that I've just not been able to keep my attention this year. Spot number 4 goes to Thorn by Intisar Kanahani. I am so sorry. I know I said that wrong. I am so sorry. This was a mind-blowing debut. Another one where I was like, YA fantasies just aren't doing it for me. And then my friend Muriel mentioned this book, and I was like, honestly, I think it was the Indigo pick of the month for 1 month. So I was like, it's on sale for a few dollars off anyways. Grab it, and if worst case scenario, it's a very pretty cover. But honestly, despite this book being, it's a bit bigger than something like The Shadows Between Us, this is a incomprehensibly wildly good debut work. It doesn't make any sense. Everything you need in this book is in this book. It's written so clearly. I don't feel like the author's trying to fit into, like, the author knows who they are as a writer, not falling into these pit traps or not trying to write like someone else, which I think is difficult for really any author to figure out who they are when they're writing. It doesn't make sense that this is a debut work whatsoever. I cannot wait for the sequel, The Theft in the Sunlight, I think it is, or The Theft of Sunlight. The characters are so good. I love the Freaky Friday swapping of bodies. That is just always so interesting. And just this whole world, everything about it is good. It's a good retelling. It's not a retelling of Beauty and the Beast for one either. And like, everything about this was fantastic. Just everything. There was not a negative thing I can say about this book. It is a bit longer of a book page-wise, but it does not feel like it because the flow is so natural. There are no scenes in here that drag things up or don't do anything. Every scene, every action, everything has a purpose to develop the world, the conflict, or the character. Number 3 goes to Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This was one of my most anticipated books of the year, and oh my gosh, it did not disappoint. I honestly don't think I could regurgitate what this actually is about. It's a long summary, but honestly, just go read it. It'll make a whole lot more sense than anything I could come up with. I've read the authors. This is the 4th book I have read by the author. So this is the 4th book of hers that I own. I've read Trail of Lightning. I own the 2nd book of that series, the 6th World series, but I haven't read it yet. And I've read Race to the Sun. This is by far the best book she has written. This is her strength. The other books, the first series, The 6th World, is dystopian, and Race to the Sun, it's a YA/new adult dystopian. Race to the Sun is a middle grade contemporary fantasy, and this is just her, like, definitely an adult complete fantasy. Like, it's a completely different world. Everything is not our world. This was by far the clearest of the book. Like, her voice is so clear as a writer here. I think it's definitely helped. Like, this is not her debut work, so she's figured out, who she is as a writer over the past few books. This is definitely the best of the books that I have read by her so far. It is fantastic. The characters especially. The whole concept of this world, and I am just utter trash for books with anything like nautical for some reason. This concept of sailing, I'm a big fan of women going into predominantly roles that are not filled by women, and so we have our main female character who captains a ship, and there's not a coup, what's the proper word on a ship? But just everything, all of the characters, the world is so fascinating and interesting. I love the traveling, the magic is slowly developed. Just everything about this book was fantastic. It deserved all the hype. Despite the level of hypeness I had, alone for the fact that we are getting more books from Rebecca Roanhorse, who is one of the few Indigenous authors that are getting published in the mainstream, this book still exceeded my expectations. Everything about it was wonderful and amazing, and I cannot recommend this book highly enough. And book number 2, spot number 2 goes to Hollow Pox. I honestly thought going into this year this would have been my number 1 pick, but someone beat it. So the Hollow Pox, The Hunt for Morgan Crow is book 3 in the Nevermore series. If you don't know, it's on this side, right? I do have a tattoo, oops, will it show, from the Nevermore series, so I am a big fan, definitely. And this is book 3. Book 1 is amazing. Book 2 is better than book 1, and book 3 is better than books 1 and 2. Okay, so we're on that path. It is amazing. It is also eerily accurate. Not accurate. It is eerily similar to our world in 2020, despite the fact that she wrote this in like 2018, 2019, I think it was. In this world, essentially an illness has exploded in their world, well, specifically in the oh my god, I'm blanking on the country's name that Nevermore is in. Is it just Nevermore? Okay, we'll say that. And all of a sudden a specific species of people, characters, creatures, whatever we're gonna call it, kind of, it's like COVID, but it's specifically targeting certain groups, and they don't know what's causing it and how to stop it. And so she has to deal with exactly who is a villain, get involved in some politics, and her kind of nemesis, I guess, Ezra Squall, and it's just amazing, actually, that I feel like in a lot of middle grade series, there's, especially bigger series, ones that are more than like 2 or 3 books, the main character, like, it seems like they never actually grow. Like, they go through conflicts or whatever, but they never actually grow up. Morgan has so very clearly grown from book 1. It's actually quite insane. And especially the ending, I don't want to spoil it, but the choices she makes at the ending, I don't think that if you had looked at the beginning of Nevermore, that was something that she would have even been able to have thought of, let alone thought of and made that decision. So I'm just incredibly impressed that A, this is a debut series, but how she has made Morgan so gradually grow. It's been like done with care and kind of gradually, that it's not like all of a sudden in a chapter she's acting like a totally different person. It's just fantastic. Everything about this is fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. If you have not read this series, what are you doing with your life? And I cannot wait for book 4. And I don't think it'll be a surprise to many, but my #1 book this year was very easily The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This book, it's so relaxing and calming. Again, just like The Extraordinaries, he has this ability to make a world that is very familiar with ours, but it is definitely not your world. He has this amazing character growth of these just lovable characters. I don't think there's any giant conflict. There are conflicts, but nothing huge, but just you get so invested in these characters and just them getting a happy ending. It is such an amazing book for this year, especially to come out, that you can read this and totally unplug from the world. It's just good things happen to good people in this, and that's what I want. That's what I want in the world. And everything about this, there's so many scenes that make me giggle and just kind of awe, and like my heart melts a little bit. I love the orphanage that they go to. I love our main character, and I kept giggling at the beginning when it kind of shows what his world is like, and it's kind of a very mundane existence. And you can see that very clearly, but like he gets called to his bosses and he's like, okay, well, I got called to extremely upper management. So he takes these like archetypes and these formulas of our world that we all know and identify with, but he kind of clearly places it in a world that is not ours, but has similar problems and conflicts. And just, it's a relaxing read. And I just want to continuously reread it. I am not sick of it by any means. And every time, I've been pushing this book nonstop on everyone I know. And every time someone takes like 3 to 4 months to read it and they finally read it, I get a message at 2 o'clock in the morning being like, bitch, what the hell did you give me? Why is this book making me cry? I'm so happy. And it's a weird book that I would classify it as both adult and middle grade. Like that is a very weird occurrence. Just an amazing book. I think I read it 3 or 4 times this year. I'm not 100% sure. It's one that I'm buying kind of for everyone that I know that doesn't already own it for the holidays. If you're only going to read one book on this whole list, let it be The House in the Cerulean Sea. I think we all deserve the ability to do that. I also, when I describe the book to people, find myself becoming calm because it is such a calming book. So those are my top 10 reads of the year. I also had a couple honorable mentions, and I will kind of just put them in a list here. They're all great books, but for one reason or another, I just felt that it was more important for these top 10 to be in those spots. These books were fantastic. They brought something new to my reading world this year for sure. The Blackbird Girls especially brought a lot. That was one book that I didn't know exactly what I was expecting going into it, but it was more than I was expecting, and it covered a lot more than I was expecting. And even with those difficult things that it does cover for a middle grade book, it's fantastic, and it's another one I would recommend to really everyone. It's not on the top 10 list, but it's definitely here. But all of these books were fantastic, and I hope you had a wonderful reading year this year. If you have any like top 10 or top reads this year, let me know in the comment section. And yeah, I will link all of these books in the description down below. I will also link all of my social media. If you follow me, it will follow you back. Stay safe, wear a mask, Black Lives Matter, and have a wonderful day, holiday, whatever, and stay safe during this holiday season and COVID holiday season.